Hello everyone, welcome back to the Tent of Abraham. I'm Tamir Kreisman from Israel, and this is Parashat Toldot. The generations, Genesis 25:19 to 28:10. And this one is called Blind Faith. Have I told you guys before how I write these things? You see, I love teaching, I love learning, I love helping. Many of you know. Whenever I get a message that I have to give, that's a harsh message. I never like giving it. I always have to check myself and the energy that I'm projecting at this point. Because, many of you have said many things regarding my delivery. I completely get it. I'm holding back a lot. And it's also very difficult to balance the heaviness of the times, but the upside of the times with the seriousness and the respect due to Parashat Shavua, but also keeping my personality in check. I'm a joker, okay? I would love to speak, I could speak on any topic, but I really want to just try and keep it here. So again, if it's a little bit too light, if I want to lighten the thing, then it might not come across as sincere. But make no mistake, everything that I'm saying here really it comes from the Torah. And it is sincere as possible, but I don't want to, have with like a type of situation. Okay, so just go with me on this, and we can all enjoy this because you're supposed to enjoy yourself and be happy while you're learning Torah, even if you are learning about the end of the world. So it's all good, right? Because the bottom line is, what's my goal here? Do I want to push people away? Or do I want to draw them in? All right. Now, on the surface, the answer would be, of course, to draw people in. But the truth is, and again, the truest and most unbiased form of examining this objectively and collectively, the answer would be both. It's to push them away and to draw them in. I need to draw those in who are Israel, who have that heart, while pushing away the Erev Rav. There's a lot of people out there. I think that we got a pretty good group going, okay? There's not that much, sometimes people ask questions like we said, you want to fight. Why? Don't just go elsewhere. Leave this place, just respect the channel. Anyway, the only way I know how to communicate is to speak the truth, okay? And I know it hurts, it cuts like a knife. That's kind of like the purpose of it. While those that are of Israel, though they'll take the pain, they'll swallow that pill and understand it's for the sake of actually healing, that those who are not willing to take offense or be aggressive in regards to whatever it is that they hear. I'm speaking from experience here, okay? So again, why am I doing this? What do I have to gain from this? The theme that has been presented to us since Bereshit is that of the tree of knowledge of good and evil versus the tree of life. Many out there might say it's the tree of, it's good versus evil, but it's not good versus evil, it's good and evil. They're part of the same package. Those with understanding will know that they are the same tree, good and evil, and the tree of life. And it depends on the person, because it all comes down to the perspective of he who eats. So in other words, it's where you stand. This is what I've been learning regarding the Torah study, or the study of Torah, rather. Our sages say that one who learns Torah for the sake of knowledge, we've discussed this in years past, one who studies Torah for the sake of knowledge, i.e. the tree of knowledge, for their own sake, it would have been better that they would not be born. People that learn just so they can, rebuke somebody, so they can be smarter. Why are you learning this? What is this? Is this a tool of, a gardening tool or a tool of destruction? The rod, the staff, right? While learning Torah for God's sake will give you life, for it is life itself, i.e. the tree of life for all who grasp onto it. Etz chaim hi lamachazikim ba. This is what the Torah is. So, if we move forward with this very basic understanding, we see something profound. Not everyone who learns Torah is considered righteous or grasping onto the tree of life. Just because you learn Torah, okay, you got to check yourself. How do we know this? like any outcome, by its fruit. A person might not even know what their motivation is for learning Torah, but you got to start somewhere, so don't not learn Torah. Okay? Start somewhere. But again, here's the thing about fruit. They all have a husk, and it needs to be discarded. In other words, you need to remove it in order to get to the fruit. So what one person will call the fruit, the wise person will actually refer to the good part of the fruit itself. It's like pistachios, okay, for instance. Yes, each nut is a fruit, but you got to break the shell, the klipa, right? Before you actually eat from the fruit itself, correct? Was the klipa necessary for the fruit to be protected, to ripen and to grow, to be edible? Of course it was. It serves a purpose. Is the klipa necessary to eat the fruit once it's ready? Of course not. And yet, many people do, and they call it the fruit. Not actually the pistachios, but everything else. And that's why you might break your teeth on some hard shell. Maybe your gums will start bleeding, and somewhere in there you're tasting those sweet pistachios, but your mouth is all sorts of messed up in the process. This is what I'm talking about. You have to make a certain separation over there. You have to see what is fruit. Yes, it is all the fruit, but look at the ikal and not the tafel. What is important and not what is tafel. Not important, unimportant. Nevertheless, you're missing out because you won't let go. You refuse. No, all this is the fruit. Okay, have at it. How is that serving you, right? You always have to check yourself. Now, this is the mixture of pure Torah with the ripe part of the fruit, the good part of the fruit, while eating of the outer shell. If you would like to make the argument that God created it all and it's all good, I'll be the first one to agree with you. Of course, God created it all and it is all good. There's no such thing as bad if God creates it, right? But God tells us also exactly how to do everything for His divine purpose, which is to rectify the world. And if you choose what is good for you while ignoring what you might not understand or find troubling, then ask yourself, why are you learning Torah? If you want to do it according to you, why not do it according to how God wants you to learn Torah? Is that for your own sake, or is it for God's sake? This is the most basic things. This is here you go. This is how you learn Torah. Your starting point. You have to get this into your consciousness. The consciousness is very, very important, especially nowadays, because there's no wiggle room anymore. It's like a mini creation, and this will prove to you what I'm presenting here as truth, or you could see for yourself. Again, you can tell a person's perspective from where they stand. Now, don't be afraid to look where you are standing. It's highly recommended. It's the only way you will know where to go. How many times have we discussed this? If you say, no, I am here, but you're not there, you're there. That's the reality. You have to get with reality in order for you to make the necessary adjustments. So again, don't be afraid to look at where you're standing. Most people are. So don't feel bad, but work on that. Now, as far as you're concerned, you're in a minefield right now, okay? Welcome to the world. You're in a minefield. But the thing is, you actually have the map that shows you exactly where to step, how to step, where not to step, but you refuse to look at the map. That's what it is. Perhaps because you think that you have an idea of how to successfully navigate where you are, in your mind, that is. So ask yourself, are you willing to take that chance? I mean, you might not be blowing up physically, but spiritually, how do you know? Because the most valuable asset you possess is on the line. This is your life. It's life and your soul. And these are the generations of Isaac, the son of Abraham. Okay, Abraham begot Isaac. What? Why does it tell us twice in two different ways, back to back, that Abraham is the father of Isaac? Ve'ele Toldot Yitzchak ben Avraham, Avraham holid et Yitzchak. Okay, that we get it. And second, why is this how the Parsha begins? So why does the Parsha begin dafka like this? Okay, these are the generations of the heavens and the earth when they were created. on the day that the Lord God made heaven and earth. Okay, remember this, Genesis 2:4. I told you we're going to see a mini creation here in the Parsha. God created the world for Abraham, and so we have Genesis 2:4, Ele Toldot Hashamayim va'aretz behibar'am, in Abraham, be'Avraham, beyom asot Hashem Elohim eretz v'shamayim. That's one. When we bring a life into this world, we create multiple worlds, just like God did on a microcosmic level, of course. But wait, it gets better. Why does it say it twice? And God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness. Vayomer Elohim na'aseh adam betzalmenu kidmutenu. And Abraham made Isaac in his image, meaning he possessed the same good deeds as his father Abraham, that anyone who met Isaac would know simply by his actions that he is surely the son of Abraham. And Abraham made Isaac in his likeness. And just in case you happen to catch Isaac just sitting down drinking a cup of coffee without speaking a word to him, just if he walked by, you would know that he is surely the son of Abraham, since he was a carbon copy of him as well. Twice. And this is why it's written in the same form as this. And God created man in his image. In the image of God he created him. Compared to, and these are the generations of Isaac, the son of Abraham. Abraham begot Isaac. Same form, right? Okay, awesome. Abraham lives through his son. We see it continues. Abraham passed away, but again, he didn't really pass away because it continues through Isaac. And we see it continuing from Isaac through Jacob, and then next week through his 12 sons. And here we are today, doing our best to make our forefathers proud. Anyway, he carries the spark. This is the point. As we've learned in last year's teaching, how Rivka carried Sarah's spark as well. See, there has to be a balance. So we said last week, yes, when a tzaddik leaves the world, there's always someone to take their place until the time of the end. And then darkness falls. So you understand how dark it is by the smaller amount of tzaddikim in the world. So you get where we are, I hope. So, why does it begin with this, dafka? Because last week it ends with the generations, the life and the death of Ishmael, all within 5 verses. That's it. Ishmael is the klippah, while Isaac is the fruit, right? The outer shell and the good edible fruit. And so we crack that sucker right open, we toss it away, and only then do we make the blessing on the fruit. You understand? You don't make a blessing on something you don't eat. You make a blessing on something you do eat. Because the klippah does not receive the godly blessing. It is the opposite, actually. As we saw that Abraham sent the children he had with Keturah, who was Hagar, away. Why would he do this if they were good? He would never do this if they were good. But they were so heavily into idolatry that he had no choice. Again, Abraham's tent was open for everybody. But check your idols at the door. You understand? You do not bring your idols or idolatry into the tent of Abraham. He did not go there. He stood against idolatry. There's one creator to the universe. That's it. So he gave them their gifts and he sent them away to the Far East. India, China, who today make up almost 40%, just those 2 countries, almost 40% of the world's population. Boy, were they fruitful and multiplied. Not to mention idolatry and witchcraft currently running rampant in those countries till this very day. I mean, it's insane. How many gods are there in India? And then look at the children that are born. They're mutated monstrosities. Not all. Some Indians are very cute. But I'm saying, you see what's going on. Just look at some of the videos. Why do you think it's idolatry? This is witchcraft. They're running all over the place. So, what happens when you have a refined tzaddik and a tzaddikah, right? Male and female, who pray for 20 years for the sake of continuing God's promise to Abraham. And Isaac prayed to or entreated the Lord opposite his wife because she was barren. And the Lord accepted his prayer and Rebekah, his wife, conceived. You see, Sarah was she was his Ezer Kenegdo, his helpmate, as Rivka was Isaac's Ezer Kenegdo. But it literally means that his help was the opposite of him. Ezer, help, Kenegdo, against him, opposite him. So he prayed opposite her. And they were basically perfect together. They completed each other. Abraham, as we know, he was mercy. Sarah was the judgment within mercy. He was water, she was fire. She put her foot down when it was needed for the sake of God's promise, right? With Hagar. He's like, I don't want it. Yes, you are. Okay, God, do it. Okay, done. Isaac was judgment, Gevurah, as Rivka was mercy within judgment. We could see this. It's hinted to us last week's Parsha, how she commanded the water. The water came to her. That water is mercy. Rachamim. We could see this, so we saw it in the water in last week's Parsha. And then these two couples, they were a perfect spiritual balance for one another. They were created for one another. Another clue brought by our sages of Vayater, where he entreated. How did he do this? He sacrificed a burnt offering, fire. He used his power of fire, which is judgment, to call down the blessing. And another way to look at it is what he did was in a spiritual sense, of course. He created a pathway to the area that brings children to the world. And this place is called Mazal. It surrounds the Zeir Anpin, like Mazel Tov. Now, Mazal in the world, it means luck, but that's not what it means in the spiritual sense. Like good luck, Mazal Tov, but it's not that. Mazal comes from lehozil, to drip down. Nevertheless, this is called Mazal. Mazal is in charge of the children, which is why our sages say, don't call it Vayater, but rather Vayachtor, hallowed a pathway. He created the path, his wife sent up the prayers, and then Mazel Tov. That's what happened here. It's twins. And the children struggled within her, and she said, if it be so, why am I like this? And she went to inquire of the Lord. Good. Vaitrotzetsu, it says, right? What is it? The struggled. Vaitrotzetsu. Litrotzet is like larutz, to run. They were running in opposite directions. When she would walk past idolatry or anything unholy, Esav would want out. And same thing when she walked past the study of Torah, Jacob would want out. And the Lord said to her, 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 kingdoms will separate from your innards. Separate. In other words, separate is the opposite direction. There isn't not 90 degrees. What is it? 180, right? Yeah, I know. Okay. Yeah. 180 degrees. They cannot meet. That's the thing. Separate from your innards. And one kingdom will be mightier than the other kingdom. Who's going to be mightier? And the elder will serve the younger. You understand? The older might have been a mightier kingdom, but he will still serve the younger. But then again, the younger, we know who the younger is. And so ultimately that will be a mighty kingdom. See, it depends who you are and how you want to interpret these things. At the end of the day, there is Israel and there is Edom. And both cannot stand at the same time. When Israel fell is when Rome was born. In fact, it was said that when King Solomon took the daughter of the king of Egypt as a wife, that is when the angel Gabriel came down and planted the seed that grew up to be Rome. Right there in the middle of the ocean, because what is Italy today, or the island over there, it did not exist before. Very interesting. Just so you know, Gabriel is the boss of the Samech Mem. Okay, he's his boss, basically. He is judgment. He is destruction. He gives out the orders as given from God. So when Rome became the mightiest empire the world had ever seen, Israel was in exile for 2,000 years. And what happened back then? Israel invited Rome in to settle their internal conflicts between brothers. When brothers fight, guess what? You let the other side in and look what happens. 2,000 years. Well, we're back now. And now that we are back in the land, though we are still in the final exile, because again, things have to happen, in order for us to build the third and final temple and build Jerusalem, making it the capital of the world. In order for these things to happen, which I believe, regardless of our opinions, that everyone watching here today agrees with. We want this, right? We want Mashiach. We'll discuss another time who we think Mashiach is or not is or whatever. That's irrelevant right now. We want God's kingdom here on earth. And for that to happen, Jerusalem has to be rebuilt. The temple has to be restored. And it has to be called the capital of the world. In order for that to happen, what has to happen first? The current world capital must be completely dismantled and destroyed. So, when you pray for world powers to stand strong, we don't need those world powers to support Israel, because that's leaning on man and not on God, you see. So when you pray for certain things to happen, if you just read the Torah, you know that this goes against God's plan. And when that happens, and it is happening, God will correct every single one. Meaning, the only remaining superpower and the strongest and most prosperous nation to have ever existed in the world must fall. Okay? This is not my opinion. This is the Torah. This is prophecy. Read it. This goes by your own understanding even. It's opposite nations. They cannot meet. When this one is up, that one is down. Okay? So for Israel to go up, everything else, the whole world system has to come apart. Everything. This is not personal to one region. Please do not misunderstand. If you still pray for a man, you will fall as well. But it's not enough to just physically destroy Edom. It must also be destroyed spiritually. Okay? Meaning the power that they once had in prayer, which God allowed for a time being, has to come to an end. And what happens when you pray in the name of whoever, and you just get no relief, or things don't go your way, and your worst nightmares come true? Maybe it's God showing you, maybe don't do that. Maybe listen to me. Maybe go eyes on Jerusalem. Just maybe. Just a thought, right? Edom is not just a place, because if it were just a physical place, it wouldn't make any sense. Okay? Right out my window over here, I'm overlooking the Jordan Hills, okay? The southern Jordan Hills by the Dead Sea. These are the hills of Edom. What's coming out of there? I mean, not much. No more superpowers. There's only one. No more false gods. There's only one. No more false messiahs. There are only two. And when this great superpower falls, the world will follow suit like dominoes and fall completely into open chaos. If it's not open chaos enough, hold on to your hats, because the spirit of Edom, whose guardian angel is the angel of death, the Samech Mem, the Satan himself, will be let loose upon the earth and draw all the darkness to where? To Israel. But make no mistake, he's only doing what he is told. Ezekiel 38, we're going there. Son of man, set your face towards Gog, in the land of Magog, the prince, the head of Meshach and Tubal, and prophesy concerning him. And you shall say, so said the Lord God, behold, I am against you, Gog, the prince, the head of Meshach and Tubal, and I shall unbridle you, let loose for a time, and I shall put hooks in your jaws, and bring you forth and all your army, horses and riders, all of them clothed in finery, a great assembly, with encompassing shield and buckler, all of them grasping swords. Where is he bringing them? He's bringing them to Israel. So yes, we're talking Gog and Magog here. What is Gog and Magog? The numerical value is 70, representing the 70 nations. That would include whatever is left of whatever allies we once had. Whichever countries that Israel put faith in to get their back are no more. And now the 70 nations, I mean, today, what represents the 70 nations? It's the United Nations, right? New York? Okay. Keep that one in mind. Order will leave the world. Chaos will ensue, naturally. But no worries, my loves. What we do know as a fact, what do we know as a fact comes out of chaos? What follows the darkness? Now the earth was astonishingly empty, only tohu vavohu was chaotic, and darkness was on the face of the deep. This was at first, and God said, let there be light. Now here comes the light, and there was light, and God saw the light, and it was good, awesome, great, but light and darkness cannot exist in the same space and the same time, and God separated between the light and between the darkness. Opposite ends. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And it was evening, and it was morning, one day. From chaos to order, from darkness to light. We've learned this. And her days to give birth were completed. We're back to our Parasha. Oh yeah. And behold, there are twins in her womb. Listen up now, okay? 9 months of tremendous struggle, during which time Esav, Edom, tried to strangle Yaakov already in the womb. These are not 9 calm months, but rather 9 very confusing months. Okay, how do we know it's 9 months? Vayimal'u yamei haladetet. Her days of birth were completed. Many of the, for instance, I only learned this week that all the tribes, Jacob's sons, their pregnancies were 7 months each, right? Moses was 6 months, 9 months right here. Rivka, 9 months, Yaakov, or Esav, and Yaakov. Okay. Now, it says the word for twins here is, well, not here. The word for twins is te'omim. But the Torah says tomim, okay? It doesn't even have a yud. Technically, without punctuation, it would be tomam. Anyway, it doesn't have an aleph over there, and it doesn't have a yud. Because already in the womb, there was evil, and there was no room for holiness when there is evil. But I thought darkness and light cannot coexist in the same space at the same time. They cannot, and that's why there was already a separation in the womb from the very beginning. This is something Jacob would have to wrestle on his own. Again, because already in the womb there was evil and there is no room for holiness when there is evil, and yet this is something that Jacob would have to wrestle with on his own. That's foreshadowing. The light and the darkness were mixed. Again, God will separate that. And what we get as a result is very, very interesting. Within the 4 letters of Tomim that we have in the Torah, we have the word Tom, which is perfect, innocent, blameless, right? Noach ish tzadik tamim, Yaakov ish tam yoshevo alim. He was a perfect, blameless, innocent man sitting, dwelling in the tents, right? But now Tom, written backwards, is mavet, mot, death. So you have perfection, in other words, innocence, blameless, and you have death in the same word. We have life and death within the womb. And also something that I haven't seen anyone discuss. So this is just my opinion. I'm just wondering, I'm going to share it with you right now. You can run with it or whatever. The 4th letter in the word of Tomim, because we have Tav, Vav, Mem, and then we have another Mem, a closed Mem, okay, including Torah of one side and death of the other. So you have Torah and death. It may as well be the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil, also known as the tree of death, right? Tree of knowledge of good and evil is the tree of death. What we have left then, once we take out the 3-letter word, we have a mem. And like we said, it's a closed mem. An open mem is different than a closed mem, which means that it is hidden. Whenever we see something in the Torah that is open, because there are 5 letters like this, whenever we see an open mem, it's kind of like this with the little nug on top. Only it's like, anyway, look up mem All right. A closed mem is like this. In other words, there's no space to exit, right? Open mem still has an exit. So that means that when something is closed like that, that means it's hidden, specifically when it comes to mem. And what does it mean when it's hidden? It means that those who are foolish will not be able to understand, as Daniel wrote, but the wise will understand. Why? Because open mind, right? The letter mem represents Mashiach. And so you have Mashiach of life, which undoubtedly comes from Yaakov, and occupying the same space, you have Mashiach of death, coming from Esav, Edom. These two cannot coexist. One will always be on top. But what did God tell Rivka? That the elder will serve the younger. He didn't say when, but we know that we don't have much time left now. So the answer is, well, when? Soon. Pretty soon. You have your false Messiah of Edom under the influence of the Samech Mem, Satan, who, as we already know, practically invented the art of deception, right? And we have your real Messiah of the seed of Jacob, of the seed of Isaac, of the seed of Abraham. Now, do we know if we are being deceived? Meaning if we are eating of the tree of death or not. How do we know this? Most people will not know. Why will most people not know? Listen up right now. Not unpacking, just listen. Most people won't know if they're eating from the tree of death because, as we have learned already in Bereshit, it tastes so good. It looks so good. It feels so right. How could it be evil if it's so good? How could it be wrong? How could it be false if it seems so good? Remember that part about the testing that we read? It's that. But we do know how not to be deceived. Tree of life, Torah. You stick to the Torah, there's no way that you're going to fall for that. And so it's very easy to see who has fallen and who has not. Remember our closing statements last week, right? Okay. Right here in our Parsha is the practical birth of these forces. So after 9 months of birth pangs, 9 months, very, very uncomfortable, as in a spiritual war is ensuing that will help shape the face of the things to come. What comes first always? What comes after the 9 months? Briefly. And the first one emerged, ruddy. He was completely like a coat of hair, and they named him Esav. Red hair, judgment of the entire world was just born. And they named him Esav. Who's they? Don't the parents do the naming? It wasn't his parents. It says the simpletons who happened to be in the area didn't understand what they were even looking at, but said, oh, well, this probably means something good because he was, after all, born of Isaac. So, yeah, I think. They didn't want to look foolish, basically. This is what happens when people give names to other people that they should not. But God agreed with them because it wasn't exactly a compliment, so he allowed it to happen. They named him Esav because, and I quote, Adam Asui, Esav Asui, because he was Adam Asui, literally translates into man-made. Do you hear this? This is our Chazal. I can't make this stuff up. And also, because within the name Esav is also the word Ash, Ein Shin, moth. And what are moths known for? For suckling on our clothes, consuming our clothes. And this is what Esav does. This is all right there. He consumes the clothes of Torah scholars. What does this mean? Just like Ishmael wants to claim this physical, in the physical realm, this is my holy site. No, that's my holy site. This is my land. Okay, you want all the physical things. Esav wants to claim the spiritual. No, that's my Torah or Bible. See what I'm saying? You get it. One hijacks our land and the other our scriptures or our faith. But in the end, what the moth is most attracted to is the flame, and he will get consumed in the same flame in which he attempted to burn his brother. Lamentations 4:22. The punishment of your iniquity is complete, O daughter of Zion. He will no longer send you into exile. But your iniquity, O daughter of Edom, he shall punish. He will reveal your sins. It's a very interesting choice of words. So after 9 months of chaos and confusion, the darkness emerges, and the fools will rush in, not knowing what they are looking at. But don't worry, because like we said, when does the light come? Immediately afterwards, and not even immediately. The darkness does not even end. It's right at the tail end, and yet not. And afterwards his brother emerged, and his hand was grasping Esav's heel, and he named him Jacob. Did I give it away when I pointed upwards? Now Isaac was 60 years old. It says when she gave birth to them, but Hebrew says beledet otam, as in he gave birth to them. The light comes on the heels of the darkness. The end of the darkness is the beginning of the light. And God saw that the light was good, and God separated between the light and between the darkness. And he called his name Yaakov. You got that? Okay. And the youths grew up. And Esav was a man who understood hunting, a man of the field, whereas Jacob was an innocent man dwelling of tents. Here we go. Vaigdelu hanearim. What does it mean, Vaigdelu hanearim? That means everything that we just discussed of their character and personality, they just multiplied. They got bigger, they got stronger, each in their own way. Esav, ish yodea tzayid, he knew intimately hunting. He was a man of the field. Ve'Yaakov ish tam yoshev ohalim, just like we discussed. So here he is dubbed as Tamim. Now, what does it mean understood hunting? A man of the field. He understood the ways of the world, the material, and he lived and he thrived in the earthly system, in the worldly system. Innocent man dwelling in tents, people of the book who keep to themselves. Leave me alone. Let me just do this here. That's it. And Isaac loved Esav because his game was in his mouth, but Rebekah loved Jacob. Okay? A lot of questions about this verse. Let's explain it. It bothers a lot of people. It kind of bothered me too. No one ever gives like a clear answer. But again, you know that this is all by design. You know that Isaac wasn't a fool. He was Isaac, for goodness sakes. He is Gvura. He is the son of Abraham, the father of Yaakov. He gave his life. He's not a fool. And even though he might be blind, he's not that blind. We will see what's going on over here. Isaac was the spiritual manifestation of harsh judgment. His spiritual color was red, just like we learned what the colors, they kind of split. Chesed, Avraham, is blue, silver, and white, which are the garments of the Kohen. Because underneath Chesed, we have Netzach, We have my board's down there, I didn't pick it up in a while. Anyway, we have Netzach, eternity, which is Aharon. And above Abraham, we also have the Kohen of Shamayim, which is Michael, right? The archangel. So on the left side, we have Gvura, which is Yitzchak, to balance out the flowing of the water, and that is fire. And those colors is red, pink, and orange. And those three colors just happen to be the colors of what is our flesh, right? Blood and pink and orange and red and all that stuff. Anyway, so that was balancing these things out. But his primary color was red. Esav was red when he was born. Not only was he red, but he was hairy red. Now, hair signifies judgment, right? That's why women need to cover their hair, because they're women generally are judgment. In a marriage, usually the husband is water and the woman is fire. Say it ain't so. I mean, it is so. So hair signifies judgment. Red hair, forget about it. Furthermore, Esav's face was reminiscent of Isaac, and so he saw himself in his firstborn son. You understand? You saw okay, he's red, hairy, he kind of looks like me. Immediately there's like that, that primal imprint over there. However, Esau, now what did Jacob look like? I know that they were twins, but actually we've discussed this before. Jacob looked like Adam, not when he was in the Garden of Eden. And it's funny, and you're right, this is funny though, because it says when Adam was first created, his heel, it specifically says in the Zohar that his heel was greater than the sphere of the sun. He was the most glory. He stretched out from all the cosmos. That was Adam. That's when all the heavenly hosts started to worship him, because he was supposed to be Lord over them by design from God, obviously. When Adam fell, it said that he was mea amma, it was 100 amot, which is about 47 meters, I think? 47, yeah, it's about 47 meters. Do that in feet, because 1 amma is 47.9 centimeters. So it's almost 48 meters. It's very big. Adam essentially was a giant. So if he was a giant, could you imagine the giants? They were giant. Anyway, off topic. Sorry, let's get back. However, Esav was not the spiritual manifestation of harsh judgment. He was not. Of holy judgment, but rather he was the physical manifestation of unholy judgment. I'm going to read that one again because I went off topic. However, Esav was not the spiritual manifestation of harsh judgment, of holy judgment, but rather the physical manifestation of unholy judgment. This is why I write things down, because if I go off, I could just go. And the words that are used to describe this are ki tzayid befiv. His game was in his mouth. Game, in other words, tzayid, what he hunts. Okay? Meaning he was a hunter. Tzayad. Now, pay attention. He didn't only hunt animals, because that would be too easy. So what? He's a hunter. Great. He was a hunter of men. In order for you to understand one, you got to understand the other, and you know that they're basically opposites, right? While Jacob brought people to Torah, Esav brought people to idolatry. He was a hunter of men, for he used the tools that he learned in his father's house to turn men to idolatry. This is not good. And his game was in his mouth, meaning he was a player in that sense, right? He used his cunning words because he was from the side of the serpent. And incidentally, this stands till this very day. I want you to pray. Okay, that's good. I want you to worship. Okay. To God, the creator of all things. Oh, okay, sure, right? Great. How could it possibly be from the serpent who's telling me to pray and to worship to God? How could this be? It's because of your intentions. If you don't know how or who or what, then ultimately your prayers go to the other side. This is what it all comes down to. That's why it's deception. You don't know. You think you technically are doing everything right. You're just aiming it at the wrong area. That's it. The most classic example of this in the world today is that Edom are concerned with much prayer. No doubt. Great. So much power there, but where is the power going? Primarily for the individual's sake. Oh yes, save me, help me, protect me, show me, give me, lead me, redeem me, me. That's idolatry. Whereas Israel prays, save us, heal us, forgive us, clean us, redeem us. Because we know that without all of us, there is nothing. That's the difference. Doesn't matter if there's one tzaddik or a million tzaddikim. If there's one person that is not on that level, everyone suffers. You can't get around it. You can't. There's some rabbis in the past that they would go, even Rabbi Shlomo Karlibach, he would go into He was in the whole hippie movement over there to getting people out. This man was a great tzaddik. He's like, I'm not leaving a single one behind. But not everybody could do that. Not everyone has the self-control to do that, to go into the depths of hell and not be tainted by its filth. But he did, and he left a mark. Other rabbis, every person's got their own talents and their own functions. Anyway, just an example. We need everyone. Everyone who is Israel, we need. We cannot do this without everyone. And what do we pray for? Have you opened the Siddur lately? Bring us back to the knowledge of your Torah. Save me. Bring us back to the knowledge of your Torah so we can know how to be redeemed. When redemption comes and you are not ready, you won't make it. Do you understand? A prep has to happen first. So let's say the end is not going to happen tomorrow. I say time is up. Again, I'm not ever claiming to know when the time is, but understand what I'm saying. A process has to take place, and you have to start now in order for you to be ready whenever. Okay? Can't just happen like that. It's work. You will be holy, for I am holy. Oh wait, here comes the two. But if I am holy and you are not holy, how there's light and darkness. Did you see? Right? This is why Jews are always searching how to be better every moment. This is why we study halacha. We take down the verses of the Torah and we break it down. What did God mean? Oh, who cares? Just do that. But what did he mean? We don't think like God, but let's try, given the whole Torah, to try and think like a little bit higher than what we are, and then a little bit higher than what we are. And this is the foundation that all the sages have built for us for thousands and thousands of years, up until this very day. I don't know how proud they'd be, but the fact is, of any Jews learning Torah today, kol hakavod, because, again, this is the hardest time in history. And do we do it for our own sake? Oh, so I can be... Why? No. Why do we study Torah all day long? No one pays us to study Torah all day long. We could be out doing anything else, literally. But this is what Jews choose to do. Why? For our own sake? Logically, that makes no sense. It's for God's name's sake. We are preparing to give our lives every and any day, just like we discussed last week. And one does not just wake up in the morning and feel that, you know what, I want to give God my life today, and then understand what that actually means. It's a way of life, and you have to live it in order for that to happen. You can't just feel it, because then it's gone. You're in an emotional moment, and you go through something. Take my life. And then what happens afterwards? See, this is what I'm talking about. Even when it sucks, even when you don't feel like giving it, that's when you give it. Because it's a way of life. I'll always go back to workout examples, right? If you need to build resistance because you know that a fight is coming, or these UFC guys, right? They got a fight coming. They have to train. They can't just wake up in the morning and go into a fight because the other guy's been training like crazy. We're talking about sleep and food and cardio and weights and muscle and resistance. All these crazy things have to go in there. So you'll end up in a fight whether you like it or not. Are you going to be prepared? That's on you. And this is the way of life. And it's only when you surrender your life to the will of God that you are actually worthy of living. Each and every one of us is kind of on a pay-it-forward situation, because we are not... What have we done to earn this life? It's not what we have done. We haven't done anything. It's what we have to do. And that's why we do not rest. So again, he was indeed a master deceiver and a mighty hunter, because you will be convinced of everything, only all your efforts will be going to the opposite end of what you think that they're going to. And where have we seen this kind of description of a person in the past who was a mighty hunter? Genesis 10. And Cush begot Nimrod. He began to be a mighty man in the land. Again, Gibor ba'aretz. Gibor, also Giborim from like the giants, right? Everything is hinted here. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Therefore, it is said, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. Now, Do we know the Nimrod and Esav connection? I mean, I've discussed this in past teachings, but we'll get to that in a bit. I'll give you a recap. What Isaac saw in Esav was still, in a sense, a reflection of himself. Esav wasn't completely evil. There still was some redeeming qualities about him. But Yitzchak saw the best parts, if you will. Since, as we have been discussing in weeks past, there is a positive and a negative side to all the sfirot, and Esav took the bad part of judgment while Jacob took the good part. And one more thing, and the Zohar discusses this. Esav's head, specifically his mouth, his game was in his mouth, or his game was kind of in the holy system. But the rest of him, his body, the physical, was fully connected to everything but the system of God, which is why also his head is buried in Ma'arat HaMachpelah, in the cave of Machpelah. Only the head. In fact, if you go there today, you have, the patriarchs and the matriarchs, they each have their own tomb and their room, and there is even one for Esav, but it doesn't say his name over there, because you don't come to pray in his name, but you recognize that his head is buried there for a reason. He was decapitated. Why was he decapitated? Because he was delaying Jacob's funeral, and his head rolled right in there. When they came to bury Jacob from Egypt, Joseph and all of Egypt and the 10 tribes and everything. So Esav and Ishmael and all them guys, they met him there, right? And they're like, no. Or not Ishmael, I'm sorry, but Ishmael, the descendants of this is our place, the cave of Machpelah. So I forgot which one, but one of the grandsons of Jacob said, enough of this, and he drew his sword and he cut Esav's head off, and it rolled right in the cave, and they didn't touch it, and so his head was there, possibly the only holy part of him. So it's in the Midrash. You can actually read it in the book of Jasher. So why did Isaac love Esav more than Jacob? Because he was the physical embodiment of his spiritual attributes, all, however, in the negative way. Nevertheless, Isaac is human after all. But he is also a man of God, and that makes all the difference. You see, it might seem that our Father, Heavenly Father, favors Esav, just like Isaac might have favored Esav, as he had indeed favored him for so long. But this is only so Esav would do the work while we, Jacob, would inevitably reap the benefits. Just like the husk always emerges first, its entire function, purpose is for the sake of the fruit itself. Now you may ask the question, and you should ask the question, how could it be that two tzaddikim produced someone, Isaac and Rivka, Yitzchak and Rivka, produced someone so wicked and so evil, whose ministering angel is Satan himself? How could this be? That no one should say that God does not create both good and evil. Rivka was a tzaddikah. Was she not? So who's going to, oh no, he was born there. You don't even, Amalek, who do you think Amalek is? It's this guy's grandson. It came from tzaddik and a tzaddikah. No one can argue and say where choice comes from. And furthermore, again, they both come from the same source. And so, is evil bad? Is anything that God creates bad? Careful. In one of the conversations in the Zohar, there was a fly or a mosquito that was disturbing one of the rabbis over there, or like a cockroach, something like that. And he simply stated, I don't like those. They're so annoying. He was annoyed with them, right? He was reprimanded by Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. What did Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai said? How dare you say anything that God created as bad, annoying, or even unnecessary, so much as a fly or a cockroach? You understand? Everything has its purpose. Yep, it's like that. What is that unnecessary? If God made it, is it unnecessary? Everything that happens to you throughout the day is from heaven. Everything. So, is Esav evil? Yes, he is. Does he deceive men? Yes, he does. Is he a man of bloodshed and idolatry? You betcha. Is his existence bad? Absolutely not. Good and evil come from the same source, and they are each called to fulfill their designated purpose. Now Jacob cooked a pottage, and Esav came from the field, and he was faint. Why was he faint? Because he was just in the field decapitating Nimrod, right? Now, we discussed this last year. The boys were 15 years old at the time. On this day, they were 15 years old. Well, actually, when was it? That day was Isaac's birthday. It was Erev Pesach, and it was Abraham's death day. So Abraham died that day. Isaac was in the tent. Esav was out hunting. Okay? Who was he hunting for? He was hunting for Nimrod. Again, this is also in the book of Jasher. You could read that Nimrod heard about this other mighty hunter. Now, Nimrod had the garments, right? You know, the garments from Adam and Eve. And that's why he was a mighty hunter. But then there's this other guy, Esav, who's this mighty hunter, and he doesn't have these garments. And he was a kid. He was a teenager, a young teenager. So they were kind of hunting each other. And so Esav got the upper hand, and he leaped out, and he killed two of Nimrod's king's guard, and then he decapitated him, took his clothes, and he fled. Great story. Anyway, the lentils that Jacob was cooking was actually mourner's food. Specifically, this is why we know this, because it was considered comforting due to its spherical shape. It was round. Okay? The poetic justice in all this, right, is that the man who tried to kill Abraham was decapitated by his grandson, Esav, while Esav would go on to be decapitated by the grandson of Jacob, who he tried to kill. And Esav said to Jacob, "Pour into me some of this red pottage, for I am faint." He was therefore named Edom, and here he gets his name. Yaakov Ishtam, Esav named Edom. So says God. So we know that Esav is Edom. But what most of the commentators don't want to touch is the connection between this passage and Isaiah 63:1. There are also a few other things, but it's a big study within itself. But I want to touch it because it's a nerve, and they like pushing on it. But we learn from it, so it's good. Anyway, who is this coming from Edom? Here's why it's relevant. With soiled garments from Bozrah, which is right down there, geographically speaking. This one, who is stately in his apparel, girded with the greatness of his strength, I speak with righteousness, great to save. Okay? This alludes to Mashiach, who will come out of Edom. The reason that many of the sages, most if not all, have been so hesitant to touch this is because it will obviously be hijacked by the other side, claiming it as their own. This is what we discussed that Esav actually does. Because of this, for 2,000 years, the sages have not spoken openly about Messiah in the greatest detail. There's talk about Messiah, sure, but still it's foggy. You have to be extremely learned, open-minded, and open-hearted to even begin to comprehend what's going on here. You can read their words all day long, but if you don't possess the knowledge, the wisdom, and the understanding, pureness of heart, why are you studying this? You understand? Then they won't be anything but a bunch of words. I'll give you an example. Now again, please be patient with me, okay? The purpose is to educate. You can disagree. That's not a problem. Just don't disrespect the platform. I'm not disrespecting anyone. I'm bringing what I found that some of the sages were talking about, okay? Who is this coming from Edom, right? So let's say that we can agree, for now, hypothetically, that we are speaking of Mashiach over here. Edom, what is Edom? We know what Edom is today, okay? It's not only Edom, Rome, Christianity, but also it's the Western world. Look, he's coming from our side. He's coming out of Edom. That means surely he is there, which is unfortunately common practice to present things out of context, which you cannot do. Thereby, you can say anything you want and build a case. But it's false, right? To do anything like that. And so what's the point if you're searching for the truth? Do you want to be right, or do you want the truth? But if we keep reading, for instance, verse 2, why is your clothing red and your attire like that of one who trod in a wine press? A wine press I trod alone, and from the peoples none was with me, and I trod them with my wrath, and I trampled them with my fury, and their lifeblood sprinkled on my garments, and all my clothing is I soiled. For a day of vengeance was in my heart, and the year of my redemption has arrived. Oh, I think we're all waiting for this year of this redemption. Okay, all right. So, Mashiach destroyed them. Who is them? His enemies from the peoples, as the verses say. We factually know that the side of Edom, there are at least 42,000 denominations. Somebody's got to have it right, right? So clear, tongue-in-cheek, right? So clearly the peoples getting trodden on were all the other denominations who got it wrong, right? We go on. And I looked, and there was no one helping me. And I was astounded, and there was no one supporting. This changes the entire narrative, or at least it should. No one means no one, nobody. Regardless of how you look at it, first look where you are. And I trod peoples with my wrath, and I intoxicated them. Listen to the words. I intoxicated them with my fury, and I brought their power down to the earth. Their power down to the earth. Their power down. Not the nation of Edom, but the peoples. Why? We're not talking about geographically speaking. We're not even talking about what you think I'm talking about right now. We're talking about the whole world, because Edom has spread throughout the entire world and all the peoples. That's why all the peoples I trod alone. And this verse is also very similar to the one we read in Lamentations 4:22, right? But we're going to read it a little bit earlier than that for context. I'm going to give you just a little bit more so now we could see what's going on. The breath of our nostrils, the Lord's anointed. Ruach apenu Mashiach Adonai. Nilkad b'shchitutam asher amanu b'tzilo nechiyah b'goyim. He was captured, it says in their pits, but shchitut is corruption. He was captured in their corruption, of whom we had said under his protection, we shall live among the nations. Rejoice and be glad, O daughter of Edom, who dwells in the land of Uz. Upon you also shall the cup pass. You shall become drunk, intoxicate, drunk, and vomit. The punishment of your iniquity is complete, O daughter of Zion. He will no longer send you into exile, but your iniquity, O daughter of Edom, he shall punish. He will reveal your sins. It's all relevant. This coincides with Isaiah 63. But what in the world is going on here? While Edom sees things the way that they do, and for a reason, this is still by design, because this is what you have been shown. Okay. And then there are those who will claim that Messiah is actually someone who literally went into Edom to pose as Edom, and then when he comes out of Edom, he's going to be like, ta-da, gotcha. Which also makes zero sense. And I'll tell you why. Because all this time you were thinking of a man. You may have even had an image in your head. But what you're reading are all allegories. These are spiritual realities. And the only way to learn and understand this is through the Sod, the secrets of Judaism, which is rejected by Edom. It's not going to be a man literally trotting the peoples, nor will it be a man literally walking out of Edom. Because again, then he should be walking out right down the street, or over yonder. We're talking about spiritual properties here. We're talking about focused energy that makes up something beyond what you have been taught. So yes, when it comes down to it, the two messiahs will be men, basic men of flesh and blood. But it's the spirit and the soul fragments that inhabit them during the right time, in the right place, combined, that they will be able to properly perform their task. They're coming together, one right after the other, together, to destroy the enemies of Israel and to bring peace to the world through the acceptance of God and His Torah. That's it. Ben Yosef destroys the enemies. Ben David, world peace. This is their function. So forgive me, but I'm just going to reveal a few other secrets because it's time. The breath of our nostrils. This is our life force. Okay? This life force is our connection to Yesod. What is Yesod? It is the Brit, the covenant with God. It goes way beyond just keeping yourself pure, sexual immorality, and keeping your eyes. I'm talking about an awareness, okay? This is a consciousness. It's your complete outlook and understanding of things that all Israel must inhabit simultaneously. This is why when we pray for us, it is us, because we all have to say have the same mind frame at the same time, which seems impossible, but God can do all things. It happened in Egypt, right? When all of Israel screamed to God, save us, help us, redeem us. God said, I heard their cry. Moses, get in there. Now's the time. Because all of them together were being squeezed beyond belief. You think it's not going to happen again? It says, Acharit kereshit. I will redeem you in the end just like I did in the beginning. We're going to get squeezed. We know it's coming. Brace for impact. Was captured. Okay? Mashiach Hashem was captured. Now, let me ask you a question. Do you really think, even for 1 second, that anything that the Lord anoints would be captured or held against their will? What? No. It was placed there very much on purpose. You see, if you think like this, then God is not, He's not the king of everything. Then God is not in control. What, they kidnapped Mashiach? Really? He wants them to think that they kidnapped Mashiach. No problem. And why? We'll see. In their corruption, bishchitutam. I'm going to read you the Hebrew, what it says. This is Rabbi Moshe David Vali. Nirmaz bo gam ken inyan ha'hashchata shelahem, shehaita hakavana beiridato besod. It is hinted that their own corruption was His purpose of descent in secret. Velo yad'u shehu yarad kedei lehashchitam velitol et chayotam. For they did not know that He descended to corrupt them, meaning even further, and take their lives. When someone wants something with all their hearts, they get it, right? The problem is, they don't know what they're asking for. If you want to draw near to God, and if you want to know the truth, you're going to get it. But if you follow false gods and pray wholeheartedly, you'll get that too. You see, what is happening here right now is that both Mashiachs, as we discussed, will descend into the klippah, the shell, the husk. Why? Why would they go there? What do they have to look for over there? It says, in order to destroy the wicked, but also, God never destroys anything that is holy. To redeem the holy sparks. Because even within the most wicked of klippot, there is still something that is good, that cannot be discarded. And who will do this? This is Israel. And who will He do this to? Edom, Esav, his brother, which is why it was God who gave Jacob his name and his purpose. And afterwards his brother emerged. Hello, you will not see it coming. And his hand was grasping Esav's heel, and he named him Jacob, to redeem even the good sparks from Esav by grabbing onto his brother's heel and not letting him go, despite the fact that he always tried to kill him. Jacob will search for the sparks even in the heel of the wicked. He will not let them go. That's why he was created. And there was only one way that this could have happened, as there will be only one way that this will happen. And Jacob said, "Sell me as of this day your birthright." Listen to me, brother. I need you to willingly, this is not for me, this is for you. I need you to willingly hand over the right of the firstborn so I can use it properly to save us both, especially you. My place has already been determined in heaven. My face is on the chariot of God. The first drop that came out of our Father, that was me. You just stuck your head out first. And also, Bereshit Israel. At first there was Israel. It doesn't say Bereshit Esav. God created everything for Israel ultimately. In fact, that's why I said even Abraham was created for Israel. He created the world for Abraham, that he should beget Isaac, that he should beget Jacob, Israel. But if it stays with you, my dear brother, you will squander it and you will surely die, because you are connected to this instead of to that. Esav replied, "Behold, I am going to die. So why do I need this birthright? When I'm dead, it's over for me. Take it, because this has nothing to do with my life here. These are post-dated checks, you see." And Jacob said, "Swear to me as of this day." So he swore to him, and he sold his birthright to Jacob. Baruch Hashem. The Ramchal brings us something brilliant regarding Isaac's name. I was wondering this myself again. Yitzchak can be broken up into two words, two-letter words. Chai, because we have Yud, Tzadik, Chet, Kuf. The first one is Chai, life, and the other one is Ketz, the end, meaning death. Isaac is made up of life and death, light and dark. Jacob and Esav. And that's why it also says in the verse after Jacob emerged that Isaac gave birth to them, right? It said that Isaac gave birth to them. In other words, that came from him. Jacob is the remedy for the serpent's curse. Talking about heels, "And I shall place hatred between you and between the woman," Genesis 3:15, "and between your seed and between her seed. He will crush your head and you will bite his heel." The serpent will always try to bite Yaakov, Akev, heel. Which is why Jacob is going to beat the serpent at its own game. Jacob will grab onto the heel of the serpent instead of the other way around. Redemptions have to take place. Whether he knows what to do or not, he will always be taken care of. Jacob, we see he struggled his whole life. And not only Jacob, but anyone who has perfect faith in God. The perfect depiction of this encounter between Isaac and Jacob when he posed as Esav. You see, if you pay attention to the beginning, you will already know how things are going to work out, right? The end from the beginning, it's all there. You may think that it's people who are in control, but that couldn't be further from the truth. Let's take a look. And the Lord said to her, "Two nations are in your womb." Okay, we know there will be two nations, two kingdoms. We know there'll be two kingdoms. They will separate from here. In other words, they will be complete opposites. And one kingdom will be mightier than the other kingdom. In other words, when one is mighty, the other one cannot be. And the elder will serve the younger. Now we're getting a clear picture. The Lord has spoken. This is what is happening. This is not going to change. The only question is, how is it going to happen? We can follow the story and see that Either way, it would not have mattered who did what. But all the players played their parts to perfection. Isaac's vision was darkened by God on purpose. That's another teaching, another time. This will teach us that we cannot trust our eyes, for they will only deceive us. But if you're a tzaddik. And Isaac said to his son, "How is it that you have found it so quickly, my son?" At this point, when Jacob approaches Isaac, at this point he still is suspicious as to who is standing in front of him, which is why he said, "my son," and didn't call a name. And he said, "Because the Lord your God prepared it for me." Jacob just blew his cover. He tried, but he couldn't, and they both knew it. And here again is the spiritual lip service as soon as this happens. Okay, again. And Isaac said to his son, "How is it that you have found it so quickly, my son?" My son, we're seeing there's a spiritual dialogue going on here. And he said, "Because the Lord your God prepared it before me." He tried with the your, but okay, what's going on? Just like there was lip service between God and Abraham, there's lip service here between Isaac and Jacob. Spiritual, if you will. Isaac knew that there was no way, it would be physically impossible, that Esav would be able to go out hunting, catch his prey, shecht it, and prepare the dish for him in that short amount of time. Incidentally, it was also the day that he did not take out the garments. Jacob's wearing them garments. Now, unless he knew that when one goes out to do a mitzvah, then God will speed it along in order for it to be done. Jacob tried to throw him off the scent by saying, "The Lord your God prepared it for me." But at this point, they both knew. As we can see, the very next verse, and Isaac said to Jacob. He knew. He didn't actually say, "Hey, Jacob." He said, and Isaac said to Jacob, but now the Torah is mentioning Jacob. In other words, in the spirit, he knew who he was. "Please come closer that I may feel you, my son, whether you really are my son Esav or not." But the Torah mentions Jacob as opposed to his son. In other words, this is what the Torah is showing us, and this is what he is saying. It's like if you're watching a movie and there's narration over it. You see? This is spiritual Isaac to spiritual Jacob. What he was saying was, how in the world did Jacob pull this off? So Jacob drew near to Isaac his father, and he felt him, and he said, "The voice is the voice of Jacob, but the hands are the hands of Esau." I think I discussed this last year, the voice, because we command by the voice, while Esau is hands, earth, physicality. "Jacob, my son, how did you make yourself feel like Esau? Where'd you get this costume from?" And he did not recognize him because his hands were hairy like the hands of his brother Esau. And he blessed him. "Great job." And he said, "You are indeed my son Esau." And he said, "I am." Now, this was the final test because Isaac knew that Jacob could not lie. Isaac doesn't know his tzaddik son Jacob. He didn't see what was going to come from him. He went up to heaven and came back on the Akedah. Oh yeah. And plus, Jacob never lied. There are some verses in, where is it? Isaiah. You'll give truth to Jacob. Jacob never told a lie in his life. We think this is a lie here, but it's not. Read the verse again. Well, we'll read it in a second. So, at this point, there was an understanding that if he was saying, "I am," he knew that it was the Shekhinah. You understand? If that means it was speaking through Jacob, it wasn't even Jacob, because Jacob could not do it. Because if you notice, this isn't a question, "Are you my son Esav?" This is a statement. Ata ze bni Esav. You are my son Esav. Wink. Both tzaddikim, Yitzchak and Yaakov, are being protected here. One from lying, one from being deceived. Each has their own task. And he came closer and he kissed him, and he smelled the fragrance of his garments, and he blessed him, and he said, Behold, the fragrance of my son is like the fragrance of a field which the Lord has blessed. Now he knew that they were both there for this divine task. The garments that Jacob wore were the same garments that God had prepared for Adam and Eve, as we discussed. We talked about this last year, how they were passed down, and Ham stole them after, the ark from Noah, and he passed them down to Nimrod, which is how he became a mighty hunter. These garments carry the essence of the Garden of Eden. Isaac was in the Garden of Eden, okay? He was technically dead. His soul left his body. Plus, when Rivka, also is last year's Parsha, when Rivka came to see Isaac, he was walking in the Sadeh. What does it say here in Hebrew? It says, Kerech Sadeh, in the scent of a field. He was walking in the Garden of Eden. Plus, by the area over there of Machpelah, which was the entrance to the Garden of Eden. Anyway, the garments carried the essence of the Garden of Eden. Now get this, when Esav wore them, they didn't smell like nothing. Same thing with Nimrod. But when Jacob wore them, behold, the fragrance of my son is like the fragrance of a field which the Lord has blessed. How's Mashiach going to judge us? Not according to our externalities. Sense of smell. He won't be impressed by long beards or by payas or by fluffy hats or by garments of any kind. Because in this world, the clothes might make the man, but in God's world, it's not about the clothes, now is it? The same concept. Anyone could put on tefillin or tzitzit, but in order to activate it, you actually have to be a Jew with right intentions. Otherwise, what are you doing? In fact, it's bad, so don't do that. And may the Lord give you, here we go, he's invoking God, of the dew of heavens, and of the fatness of the earth, and the abundance of the grain and wine. Now you think Isaac would have blessed Esav, invoking God, if he would not have smelled the Garden of Eden? Come on, he knew who it was. In addition, the order of which it was given, from above to below. Nations shall serve you, and kingdoms shall bow down to you. You shall be a master over your brothers. What? And your mother's sons shall bow down to you. Your mother's sons. The other one. There were only two. Those who curse you shall be cursed, and those who bless you shall be blessed. Very Abrahamic. Didn't God already say this to Rivka in the beginning of the Parsha? I think so. Didn't God say this to Abraham as well? Yup. Do you think there was even a chance that this would not have come to pass? After Jacob left, Esav comes in. He realizes what happens. We all know the story. And when he begs his father for a blessing, what does Isaac say? And Esav said to his father, have you but one blessing, my father? Bless me too, my father. And Esav raised his voice and wept. So, first he said he didn't. Now he's saying, yeah, I got one for you. Kind of weird, right? What are you holding out for me, Dad? And his father Isaac answered and said to him, behold, your dwelling place shall be in the fat places. First of all, not God said, where does it say, may the Lord give you? It's not may the Lord give you. It's I'm giving you now. I'm giving you property. Okay? And his father Isaac said to him, behold, your dwelling place shall be in the fat places of the earth and of the dew of the heavens from above. It's the same blessing like he gave Jacob, only in reverse, right? He starts, without invoking God, he starts from earth upward. Jacob, upward, downward. Nevertheless, it's a pretty good blessing. Thank you, perfect righteous man Isaac, father. But what about this? And you shall live by your sword, and you shall serve your brother. And it will be when you grieve that you will break his yoke off your neck. Does this sound like a blessing? Remember, God said the older will serve the younger. And so, did God curse Esav? No, he did not. Do you recall we discussed the whole dog whisperer thing a few weeks ago, right? When a dog is not disciplined, it actually suffers because it doesn't know what it's supposed to do. If Esav is not under Jacob, he doesn't know what to do. He's suffering himself and he's causing all this chaos. His rightful place is to be ruled by Jacob. When things are out of order, chaos ensues. But even this chaos itself has an order to it. That's the brilliance of it all. Because look what happens in the end. At this point, Isaac's eyes are open, so to speak. And Isaac called Jacob and blessed him. This is before he sent him away, right? Because Esau was going to kill him. And he commanded him and said to him, "You shall not take a wife of the daughters of Canaan." Don't do it. Very important who you marry. "Arise, go to Padan Aram, to the house of Bethuel, your mother's father, and take yourself from there a wife of the daughters of Lavan, your mother's brother." We discussed this last year. He is Lavan. You know who he is, but he is your mother's brother. In other words, still there is some good, positive connection over there, and you came out of your mother, and she can handle that, therefore you can. "And may the Almighty God bless you and make you fruitful and multiply you, and you shall become an assembly of peoples. And may he give you," here we go, "the blessing of Abraham," and everything that it entails. Didn't go into all the details, but we can, Vashem berichet Avraham bakol, okay? Everything. "And may he give you the blessing of Abraham to you and to your seed with you, that you may inherit the land of your sojournings, which God gave Abraham." He just passed that along right there. Neither of them were given the direct blessing of Abraham until the smoke cleared. But when it did, there was no doubt as to what needed to happen. And there's no doubt regarding what needs to happen today. After the struggle, the chaos, there will be darkness. Listen to me. There will be. Okay? But it's brief. "For on the heels of the darkness is the good light of creation." So you don't have to always necessarily see everything that's coming, but you always have to know who is in control. You must know this. Through blind faith, we see through the darkness and into the light. Through blind faith, we know that we are doing the right thing and not what we think is right or wrong, good or bad. Although the chaos will ensue and the darkness will attempt to terrify, don't be scared. Do you understand that a blind man with perfect faith can never make the wrong call? You understand this? God will turn the world upside down before his word returns void. And God will turn the world upside down if we had a true desire to follow his mitzvot. In fact, it just so happens that God is turning the world upside down for that very reason. Can you see? The only times people got smacked is not because they couldn't see, because that's not on them. It's because they wouldn't see. So if you choose to be blind, you will be blind. And the warnings are always there in your face. The flood, Sodom and Gomorrah. Just recently, we were watching this World War II documentary, how the Nazis rose to power to conquer Europe. They just marched right into France without a shot being fired. They were stuck in this bottleneck where the entire German army was completely exposed, right there, sitting ducks. And the reconnaissance, it was told to the French generals, and it said, the guy's name, I forget, "I refuse to believe this. No way is the German army marching here." He didn't even want to look. This is the thing. He refused to look. And at that moment, if he would have sent a bunch of bombers, the German army would have been no more. That would have ended the war. And this happened several times throughout the documentary. When the forces of evil are rising, people don't want to know about it. No way. I refuse. When the forces of evil are rising, we're rising back in Nazi Germany, the Jews are like, no way, we're Germans. Sprachen Sie Deutsch. What's going to happen? Nothing's going to happen. Right? They refuse to believe that such an evil could rise both around the world and, of course, within Germany. And what happened? 56 million casualties, World War II. Nowadays, people still refuse to even look at what's coming, at what's staring them in the face. You still don't understand. All the governments in the world, they all have to fall. All of them. Yeah, even what you might perceive is good, even that has to fall. By default. Do we want God's kingdom? Then that's what's going to happen. Okay? This is all in order for God to establish his kingdom. So what are you praying for? You could pray, sure, but pray for God's kingdom to be established in the most merciful way possible. There's a prayer for you. I understand it's not easy to hear, but you know in your heart it's the truth, right? Because if you think, don't tell God how he's going to make it happen. Don't even begin to assume how it's going to happen. So instead of praying to God for what you personally want or what you think is the best course of action, since you are all-knowing and you see everything, perhaps if you pray to him for his name's sake and the sake of his kingdom, that it should be restored, we all know where that's going to happen, up the block, to forgive you and to clean you up so you can be useful to him and that you will be able to receive him. Maybe do that. See, I don't know exactly how it's going to play out. Nobody knows exactly how it's going to play out. But what I can tell you is exactly how it's going to end. God wins. That's it. Do you have faith? Because sometimes you really need to close your eyes in order to see the truth. Just stick around, okay? Thanks for joining me. It's over now. And if you are still around, then I'll see you next week. In the meantime, have a wonderful rest of the week. Stay strong, stay focused, and have a Shabbat Shalom. Good things you count. All right, bye.